4:15 mainland Spain. He's back, and he's here in the studio.
Just like a rash. I keep coming back, like dandruff.
Rich Reynolds, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. We got the band back together.
How are things? All right?
Everything's great. Everything was a very, very quiet New Year. A lot of fireworks in Valencia, but there are always fireworks in Valencia. So we, thank God, we don't have any of the snow that's hitting the States right now. But yeah, it was good, uneventful.
Yeah, big weather situation. Pretty much always in January for the UK and for the States. It's not good, is it? 5 dead so far. I'm looking for the latest headlines here. It's not. Loads of school closures, travel chaos, power cuts. Yeah. 7 U.S. states have declared emergencies: Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Kansas, Missouri, Kentucky, and Arkansas. Yeah,
and so we're doing a shout out to a lot of people who live in those states who may be listening right now. It's a terrible situation for them, mainly for these people who are flying. I mean, 2,300 flights canceled, 9,000 delays. It's a bit of a mess. But you know what? If you look back, it always happens in January anyhow. No matter where you go, unless you're in Australia, the weather is horrendous in January, and you're going to get this sort of thing. So you just have to be kind of patient and just watch yourself. The governor of Kentucky was saying it, Andy Beshear, who was saying it just correctly, stay off the roads. Don't be driving around. And it's we're seeing all these videos of these terrible accidents. And, I don't know about you, but I've been into a few of those that, you feel stupid because, what am I doing driving around? I'm going to get a quart of milk, or I'm going to get some chips or something like that.
And Sounds like you.
Yeah. Hey, come on now.
The candy bars. Sorry,
I do. I give my life for a Bounty bar. So yeah. All good stuff. But yeah, so my heart is out to everybody who's going through this.
190,000 people without power. I mean, I guess because this is a regular occurrence in some states, not all by any stretch, of course, because some areas that have been hit aren't normally it. Yeah. But those that normally are, surely they're kind of ready for this, right?
Washington D.C.
prepared.
Washington D.C. was prepared. Something interesting happened in a city that I used to live in St. Louis. In that St. Louis is pretty much divided in half on the Illinois side and the Missouri side. The Missouri side, they weren't ready for all the snow they got. They didn't plow the roads and that sort of thing. But on the Illinois side, Illinois, home of Chicago, gets a lot of snow. They were well prepared. They had salted the roads, and those roads are completely passable. So it varies from state to state, city to city, about how well they did. But this cold front just hit the middle part of the country, just starting like in Kansas and going all the way to Maryland. So it's a little crazy right now.
Now, of course, we'll be talking about the inauguration coming up on the 20th shortly. But today, and for the past few days, of course, it's been all about a former president.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter, as everybody knows, was 100 years old when he passed away a week or so ago, and he was, by all estimates, a wonderful human being. He could be a little prickly at times, I understand, from everything I've read and everything I've heard.
Of course, a lot of the time you were on air, he was in power, right? You're going to tell me it's not that long ago, but it is.
Okay, that is,
isn't it?
That is true. I was on the air during the Carter presidency. I was on the air during the Nixon presidency too. Before that, but it was I was on the air the day that Nixon resigned, as a matter of fact. But that age joke aside, he was really a wonderful human being. He had a very troubled presidency for 4 years. He really took a lot of hits. He went in just like Trump, so everybody needs to know. He came in saying, "I'm going to change everything."
I remember just the only thing I like at the time, being as young as I was, because I'm a little bit younger than you, was the fact that he was a peanut farmer. That's what I remember.
Yeah, but he was just a very guy, and he was teaching Sunday school up until he was 97, and he had he had brain cancer 5-6 years ago. And you continue to work through this. And, everybody said, well, that's going to be the end of Jimmy. And he didn't. He lasted and lived another 5 or 6 years. But he had a great life, and I think everybody should take their hat off to this man. He was a wonderful human being.
So he's been lying in repose, as they call it, and will be heading for that state funeral.
Yeah, he's lying in Atlanta right now, being guarded by service members. And then he begins the long trip. I think by train they bring him up to Washington, and he'll lie in state there. And the interesting thing is we all heard the same thing: is that there's a 30-day time of mourning. So for 30 days, all the flags are going to be flying at half-staff around the country, and how upset Trump was when that happened. And he said, that shouldn't be allowed, for my inauguration. Well, muchacho, it's not about you. It's
not everything is.
It's not about you.
Not until after the 20th.
A man has died, and so a little respect there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the flags will be flying at half-staff for the inauguration.
Perhaps he might have felt a little bit different had he been a Republican. You don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can guarantee it. But one thing that's kind of surprised me is that he said some really nice things about Carter. He has been very, very complimentary, and he said he was a wonderful man and he'll be missed and everything. And I said, really? He said that?
Well, you can't really argue with his legacy. If you read through a lot of what's been written, and then some fantastic pictures from years gone by, you can't help but be moved by the man and how great he was for his period of time when he was basically leading the free world.
Yeah, he was. No, he was not a very colorful man, but he had a lot of detractors, but. He will be missed. And just the stuff he did with Habitat for Humanity, built hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes for people, along with a lot of other people. I mean, he didn't do it. He didn't do it by himself, but he was pretty much a nice man. Never met him. Never worked with him. So.
Okay, fair enough. Now, New Orleans, we had a number of incidents over the festive period. This one, of course, the New Year's Day massacre in New Orleans, and they're building up for a couple of big events. And obviously, they're really going to have to get on top of the security now, which probably was not as good as it should have been.
Nothing down there. And I can say this because I lived down there for a long time, and that the city itself was not prepared for this. I was on Bourbon Street quite a bit 3 weeks ago when I was there with my family, and clearly there were cops everywhere, but there was no protection. You could have easily run a car down there if you wanted to.
You said there were actually, this was before this event, when you were in the studio with us, we were talking, and you were telling Moody and I that there were something like 7 shootings just the time that you were there.
Yeah, just in that, and that was a day of a regular football game being played at the Superdome. About 70,000 people. This is what the place holds. But they had 7 shootings that night alone, and that was just a regular Saturday night, and it was kind of weird how that happens. It's a very unsafe city. I'm sorry.
It gives you an idea about how perhaps how insecure it is.
It is. And so when you read the accounts of the police chiefs being told that you have these barricades, you just choose not to put them up. She said, I had no idea we even have these barricades. Really? And you're in charge. So this is kind of
wasn't a good look.
This really is a city where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is
in front of the
doing.
world's press as well. Really,
I know, and you've got. I'm telling you, February 9th, you got the Super Bowl coming up. And just so to all of you people are listening who are not American, they know the Super Bowl is in a different city every year. It's like next year it could be in Minnesota. It's usually in a warm climate. It could be in Tampa. It could be in Miami. Los Angeles, that sort of thing. But this year, New Orleans was granted. And
the Super Bowl, it will attract huge crowds.
Yeah.
Censored on one location, whereas, of course, Mardi Gras is not. Mardi Gras is right across all kinds of different
Mardi
streets.
Gras is completely around the city.
So it's even more open to that sort of type of attack with a vehicle.
Very much
especially
so.
those big pickup trucks.
There are a lot of truck floats. There are a lot of those truck parades, and just on flatbeds, and people have their crews who are, throwing out beads and doubloons and that sort of thing. And matter of fact, when I lived there, we used to mainly go to the ones out in the suburbs. But the same amount of people go to these things. I mean, it would be easy, because they're held on main roads, it would be easy to take your truck or your car and just plow down and kill lots of people if you wanted to do that, God forbid. So I think, the FBI saying, hey, the chance of this happening again is pretty good.
Well, there's going to have to be a huge security effort to try and keep people safe.
But for Super Bowl, you'll have about a little over 70,000 people in the Superdome.
Yeah.
But which is right. It's in an area called the Central Business District. It's right outside the French Quarter, about 3 or 4 blocks. But everybody, when they're done, there's nothing to do around there. So when that game is over, they're all going to go into the French Quarter, and that's when the trouble is going to start. And then coming up, Mardi Gras is March 4th, and that's a late Mardi Gras. Usually Mardi Gras can be as early as around February 5th or so. So it's going to be late this year, meaning the weather's going to be nice. Everybody's going to be out. Stay tuned.
Well, we'll keep abreast of it. Meanwhile, the FBI continue their investigation into the attacker, both in the US and abroad. They're finding out more and more about him. I mean, he's been traveling across the planet over the last few months or so, and been to different countries. And there was obviously there could have been or should have been some warning signs there about Shamsuddin Jabbar.
Well, the thing that has to be pointed out is that regardless of his name, because he recently converted to Islam, like in the past few years, but when he's from the U.S. military.
Yeah, I think it's important that we point this out because you can always get the detractors and people saying, "Oh, it's another immigrant attack," which of course he wasn't, and neither was the chap in the vehicle that blew up outside the Trump Tower,
right in Las Vegas. And I pointed this out to somebody who I said, "Well, this is." And this friend of mine works in the news business, but hadn't heard this story. And I said, well, this happened, and, they think it's a terrorist act. And she says, well, thanks, Joe Biden. I go, had nothing to do with Joe Biden. It had to do with this guy was an American soldier who
in fact, they were both in the military.
They were, and they both served in Afghanistan. So there's a case where, it was just somebody who went off their rocker, who had an axe to grind and just was not completely...
Playing with a full deck.
Playing with a full deck. That's a good way to put it. So,
and I guess that has a society implication anyway, because we're pretty much like that in lots of different countries around the world, where people who are walking the streets perhaps shouldn't be walking the streets.
But they don't have access to guns the way Americans.
Well, that's true. The upcoming inauguration now, and Congress certified Trump's election victory overnight our time. Kamala Harris having to bring in the guy that she tried to beat.
Oh, my God, I watched that.
Happens sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. It's happened 3 times in the past 50 years.
There was a time, I think you mentioned Nixon before, but wasn't it Nixon who was like, I'm not going to do it? It hadn't been done for so long,
right.
and then he didn't want to do it.
And then he did.
He didn't. He did it in the end?
He did it.
He did, yeah.
He did. He stood up there and...
But it hadn't happened for a while when it came up for him.
It hadn't. So it was Nixon. People normally think that, if you're vice president, you got a really good shot of being president.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Not so much. No, it doesn't seem like it.
Al Gore had to do it in 2000. He had to stand there and
you bring in the guy that beat you.
I know. It's hard. And I watched it yesterday, and it was the whole thing took about a half an hour, all the voting. And it was a little weird because...
What do you mean voting? Why do they have to vote again?
They were voting again. There was a tally sheet on the right-hand side that said Harris has this many votes and this is how many.
So they have to go through it again.
Yeah, she had to actually live it.
This is how I lost.
But she knew how it was going to end. She knew what the final number was. Yeah, she was sitting there, and every state had to go through, and every state would say.
I didn't realize they had to do that all again.
Oh my God! But it was like there were about 3 or 4 senators that would stand up and say. The representatives from Maine cast such and such, cast their 3 votes or 4 votes for Kamala Harris, and then the next one would say, I'm from Texas, and Texas cast their 20 or 30 votes. And,
bit of a difference to 4 years ago here, though, because nobody disputed this.
Right. Yeah, nobody, and it wasn't even televised.
No.
But this time it was, and I have to tell you, she stood up there, she took it like a champ, and she didn't have to do, she actually did have to do it, but she was she was a real adult.
I'm sure there was somebody who didn't do it when they were meant to.
I don't know. What's his name?
I can't. I know because I was just reading through the history of it, and the name escapes me now. But like you were saying, it's only happened a few times. I'm sure there was somebody who didn't, and I can't remember who it was now. But anyway.
Well, I know that Al Gore did it in 2001 actually, and I know that Nixon did it in 61. With JFK, but
I'm not sure. Anyway,
anyhow, that's
it all passed off without any ado, as it were.
Yeah, there was no big deal. It all happened. It's all done, and he's heading for the chair.
It was
the big chair.
Yeah, but they did refer to her as Madam President, but that was because she's president of the Senate.
She's
right?
the president of the Senate.
Yeah, there was a bit. I was like, what?
But I'm sure when somebody said that, she said, "That's right. I'll see you in 4 years, boys."
Oh, I don't know. You reckon?
I don't know.
Nobody's sure about what they're going to do there, are they?
I don't know. But I saw a recent poll. Here we go with polls again. I saw a recent poll that 41% of Democrats would like to see her run again, and I'm thinking, I don't know.
That's not 50%, though, is it?
No, I don't know.
And that's Democrats only. Anyway, to the main man, 4 years after his supporters invaded the Capitol, Trump is more powerful than ever, said the CNN Politics headline today.
Well, there was no riot yesterday. That was a good thing, and we were all happy about that. And I know they had every cop in the city mobilized, ready to step in and do what they had to do. But thank God none of that happened. But he's everything we're reading saying he's feeling very empowered, very emboldened, more powerful than ever. And I think if he looks at it right now, the way he's cozying up to Musk, this is turning out to be, he's getting much more attention than I think even he planned on getting. But I got a theory, a personal theory about roosters in the hen house. And I think you can't have two leaders of the free world. And right now, Musk, I think, kind of thinks he's the leader of the free world.
A little bit excited, isn't he?
A little bit excited. And we all saw that bit of video where Trump says, well, he can't possibly be president because he wasn't born here. And I'm thinking, boy, you ain't reading the room. You are not seeing it. People are saying that between the lines, he's the president. It's not. We know he can never be, but I think eventually that marriage may crumble a little bit because they're both type A's.
I was going to say both alpha males. Yeah,
they're both.
I was thinking exactly the same thing this morning. Male. I was like, it's not going to last.
Yeah, but he's really flailing around, and he's threatening to do one thing or other, and certainly as you and I were talking.
Well, the pardon, I think, is the main thing. Are the January the 6th rioters as a whole all going to be given a pardon? That would seem to be the focus of most of the American breakfast news this morning.
Yeah, I think
he said he will on day one.
He said he will, but I think hopefully cooler heads will prevail because there are people who are convicted to 15 or 20 years in jail. Not all of them got a year, a slap on the wrist.
There were some quite serious crimes committed, and of course the police in the Capitol are not happy about the fact that he's been saying that he might pardon everyone.
Yeah,
and I think in fact a lot of Republicans have been saying that it needs to be done in a case by case basis.
Yes.
They're split on this, aren't they? The
yes, they are, and I hope that's the case. I hope he doesn't issue a blanket pardon because there are some a couple of people who actually killed police officers on that, and they a couple of people were maimed for a long time. And I don't think you'd sweep this under the carpet by letting everybody go. It's not the same as Joe Biden pardoning his son. It is not the same as pardoning a white collar criminal. These were physical acts. People got killed. It's we all remember what happened 4 years ago, and it was just awful. So.
Yeah, and it kind of still leaves a lot of us incredulous. What was it he said? Summoning the mob to Washington, saying "fight like hell."
Yeah,
and yet here he is, coming back on the 20th of this month.
Yeah, so he'll be taking charge with Musk at his side. One of the people who was convicted and is confined to home confinement and has an ankle bracelet on, asked the judge to take the ankle bracelet off so he could attend Trump's inaugural. He really did. He stormed the Capitol, is doing time, and he wants to be let out. And the judge, of course, said, no, I don't think so. No, you will not be attending the inaugural. But one of the questions that you and I need to address, it's about Musk and it's his effect on the rest of the world. That's what really.
Well, he's peed off about four of the European leaders at the moment, including Sir Keir Starmer, and it's relatively different stuff. But his support for what seems to be far right policies and far right politicians, basically, that's getting under the collar of most of the people that he's been attacking.
Well, is it getting under the collar of the regular people who live in the UK, or just under Starmer's collar? That's the big question.
Well, I think generally people would say mind your own business.
Yeah.
But, I don't know why or what. You don't quite understand why would this be happening now? Why is Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who's meant to be looking after, let's face it, wastage of money in government departments in the United States, having a lot to say about how other world leaders conduct their business ahead of Trump's return?
So one of the things you need to think about is that the government, I don't know about UK governments, I can only speak for the American government, has been run by politicians for 240 years. It's run by lawyers, etc., never by businessmen. But every year we used to hear, we should put. Well, Mitt Romney ran against Obama.
Put business leaders in.
Let's put a business leader in because he knows how to run a business, so he'll know how to run a company. That's not the case. And we saw with Trump the first time how many conflicts of interest. But actually, you have to remember that when Trump came into power last time, he didn't have pretty much a sweeping say as he does this time. This time he's got many more yes people than he had the first time around. There were people who were standing up to him last time. There were, and that's absolutely the case. The problem right now is that the people who like him and support him are so enthusiastic. As much as I love Joe Biden and support Joe Biden and thinks he did a good job, he never ever has had that enthusiasm. People carrying Biden banners and people ready to march through hell for him the way Trump has. And it's good if you're Trump. It's bad if you're on the other side, and it becomes problematic. But what I was going to say is that...
But he also needs to get his facts straight as well, Musk, because he doesn't always...
That's true.
Not that seems to matter a lot in American politics.
They really are yin and yang, aren't they? They really are the two sides to the same coin when you come down to it. They're both very, very boisterous and very opinionated and have these wild ideas. And another thing I was thinking about when I was having lunch today was that these guys remind me of a couple of people that I worked with, and maybe somebody that you've worked with or anybody's worked with. If you just sit there and think, did I ever work for a boss that was kind of out there and had big ideas and didn't care who he offended? And I think we've all had bosses like that, but never a boss who was running a country. But certainly the amount of conflict of interest between SpaceX and Tesla and all the interest he has in China, in Russia, in the U.S., in the UK, they're all coming to a head, and something's going to have to happen. I mean, I don't know what is going to happen, but there's such a conflict right now. I'm just happy that we live where we live, and I can sit back and say, yeah.
How much does Justin Trudeau resigning affect the United States then? Because let's face it, I mean, even before Trump coming back in, it's not really been what you would call a fantastic ally in recent years. There seems to be a lot of arguing going on about immigration and the like.
Yeah.
And actually, that's partly one of the things that's done for him at home, immigration.
Trudeau has always been pro-immigration. He's been very, very liberal. We all know that. And I have to tell you something. The relationship between the U.S. and Canada has always been smooth. It's just been there. Americans love Canadians. Canadians, for the most part, like Americans.
Americans just take the mickey out of Canadians, let's face it.
They just kind of tolerate us. But Canada's a wonderful place, we got along well when Trudeau's father was in there, and we got along well with him. And there, of course, there were a lot of jokes, but apparently the whole thing about the economy and the cost of living, it bit him in the butt, just like it bit Joe Biden. And so he got...
That immigration also.
And the immigration thing is a huge thing. So that country is, Canada's, I wouldn't say always, but in my memory has always been, I always thought it was a very liberal country and very compassionate, but seems to be swinging to the right a little bit and a little less tolerant.
Of course, we did have the 51st state jibe as well, didn't we, from Trump? Lord. He's trying to take over everywhere at the moment, Greenland included.
And I guess he thinks he's being funny by saying, we love Canada.
He said there would be no tariffs, taxes would go down, be totally secure from the threat of the Russians and the Chinese that are constantly surrounding them.
And he wants to charge them 25% tariff on their lumber. I think that's the main thing we get out of Canada: lumber and syrup and things like that.
So it's the coalition, basically, that he had together, Trudeau, that have stopped supporting him, the left-leaning New Democrats and the Quebec nationalists as well, that have stopped really supporting him. So he's had to go. And he's hung on for a long time.
Yeah, he's about, 9 years he's been in office. But yeah, it's one of those things where even his supporters are saying he's got to go. So if that's the case, then you got to go.
And the Liberals could get quite a beating in a general election.
Pretty much so, yeah. So the whole country seems to be being a little bit more conservative, and that's just the way the pendulum swings sometimes, and that's the way it is. I mean, he went down to Mar-a-Lago and met with Trump, and Trump they seemed to cozy up, but in fact, you don't have to read between the lines to know they didn't get along well together, and Trump believed that Canada could be doing more, could be paying more. He always believes everybody should be paying more to the country, and so that's always going to be a bit of an issue. It doesn't matter who comes in after Trudeau; they're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, 22% of Canadians saying that they thought Trudeau was doing a good job at the end of last year.
Yeah.
It was pretty much on the cards, wasn't it?
Very good.
Okay, Golden Globes. I know you're a lover. You love your film Life, because you go all the time, don't you, to the cinema?
I do go to the cinema a lot, and I do watch a lot of movies.
And did you see a lot of these?
I did see a lot of them. Unfortunately, the ones that ended up winning the awards, I did not see. Have not seen The Brutalist yet, which is about World War II, and I have not seen Amelia Perez.
You saw Baby Reindeer, though, didn't you? You enjoyed
I did see Baby Reindeer, and I love Baby Reindeer. I thought, did you see it? No. Oh, my God, it's great. It's just great. It's one of those things, one of those stories that if it's even half true, it's unbelievable. But I have seen some interesting things. I don't think this was a terribly great year for movies. One of my favorite movies that I saw did not get nominated, which was called Juror Number 2. It's a Clint Eastwood film.
Poor Things, was that last year as well that you saw?
Which one?
Poor Things.
Poor Things was.
You enjoyed that?
I loved Poor Things.
But I don't think they get any nominations, did it?
No, it was last year.
Oh, that was the year before.
Okay, she won. She won.
Oh,
Best
right,
actress.
yes,
she
of
won
course.
Best actress.
Yes.
But anyhow, I did like Wicked a lot, and that's one of the few I've seen. But I guess I've seen out of the 30 films nominated, I think I probably saw maybe 15 or 20 of the films.
Wow, that's unusual for you, right?
I see it. I see a lot of movies. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
but Amelia Perez, the big winner, then.
Yeah. Apparently, it's Acquired Taste. It's a musical about drug runners, and so we'll see. Strangely enough, even though we live in a Spanish language country, it's not available on Netflix.
Really?
Espanol.
Okay.
It is not.
It's got to be some kind of legality thing.
I don't know what it is, but I can't. My friends in the States have all seen it, and I have not seen it yet. But
okay.
I heard it's.
I know somebody who might be able to hook you up with a copy.
There we go.
Apparently.
Okay.
Okay. Matt Gaetz has been begging George Santos for advice. A viral makeup fail. With this one went viral then.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz, we all know, is the crook of the week, and left Congress and now has a show on ONN, which is this right-wing network that a lot of people know about that most people have not watched. And he looked really bad, and so he asked George Santos for makeup tips. That George Santos, the same one we laughed about a year ago when I first started on this station. And Santos said, I'm really concerned. I thought you had botched Botox or something, which he probably had. I mean, he's obviously had, I wouldn't say obviously, but it seems like he's had quite a bit of Botox. But he said, highlighter is not for you. Stop highlighting the center of your face. It makes your eye very small and it gives you a glow, not the glow that you think it gives you. I'm going, one man giving another man makeup tips. There you go.
Okay, well, you want to catch it? It's One American News Network, everybody.
ONN, that's right.
Excellent. And, I'd like this story. Explain to us what Waymo is.
Well, I had never seen a driverless car because you don't really see them in Europe. But I was in Phoenix with my wife, and a driverless car came up. We were waiting on an Uber. This driverless car came up with a big
When I was a kid, you used to get these ones which basically like driving school cars,
Yeah.
and you used to get a model like that, and it had a wheel on the top.
That's exactly what
and
it
this
is.
is what it looks like.
Yeah, and it pulled up and it's got a ring on top, and it had no driver. And
So it basically it's a taxi without a driver.
it's a taxi without a driver, and they are all over the West Coast. They were in San Francisco, L.A., and in our case, we were in Phoenix. But what happened was this guy who was he's from, I believe he's from San Francisco, but he's from L.A. He was in San Francisco and got in a cab in a Waymo, no driver, and the thing just drove him in circles. That's it.
It's in a parking lot.
In a
wasn't it?
parking lot.
Yeah.
Just drove him in circles to where all he wanted to do was go to the airport and ended up going in circles. But of course, customer service is not very good in these things. And he tried calling, going, hey, I'm going in circles. I got a flight to catch. Why is this thing going around? And, I think eventually he reached somebody, but it took a while.
That's scary
to do that. But yeah, that is the way. I'm telling you, if you are visiting the States, and especially if you're in a West Coast city, get one of those. They look awesome.
Our US correspondent, Rich Reynolds, here every week. Back next week at the same time as we head towards the inauguration in 2 weeks.
Can't wait.
Yeah.